everyone. Welcome to the food tour with Chef Tom. We are making some Mattar Paneer today. I'm excited. That's one of my favorite dishes, and cucumber Raita. And I am going to put the recipes into the chat for y'all to follow along. Of course, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself, pop it in the chat. Chef Tom is here to tell you everything you ever wanted to know about cooking. And we will also be on Facebook and Instagram, checking there. If you have anything you want to ask about, just chime in the comments. And here he is, the one, the only, Chef Tom.
Hi, guys. So today, like Johanna said, we're doing Mattar Paneer, Indian peas and cheese. Hopefully everybody has the paneer that we made on Monday. Mine is actually sitting right here. I haven't even unwrapped it, so it's still sitting in the cheesecloth that I'd left it in the other day. I figured I'd unwrap it here. And you can see that I am unwrapping a solid block of cheese. And that's what we have, and that's what we'll be working with. We won't be using all of it today. So whatever we don't use, I will wrap up and put in the freezer because paneer freezes beautifully and it's easy to use after it's been frozen. The cheesecloth that I just used, I will wash, dry, and reuse as well. I hate wasting things. So, all right, to begin with, we're gonna mince an onion again. As you've noticed, all meals I've done here have onion. I am a huge fan of onion. An onion a day keeps the doctor away. They say apple, I don't believe it. So I'm a big fan of alliums in general. Onions, garlic, scallions, anything in that family. Wonderful. So to that end, we're just cleaning off an onion. My onions are very large this case, so where the recipe says a medium onion, I'm using about a half an onion, which may be a little bit more than the recipe calls for, but that's okay. At the moment, I'm just going to take my knife and run it against my steel, which allows me to just give it a little bit of a finer edge when I'm going ahead and slicing and mincing onions. So to do that, I have the half an onion. It's flat on the countertop. I'm just taking my knife and cutting through. But as I cut through, and unfortunately you can't see that, the onion is still actually together in one piece. While it has lots of small cuts, it is still one onion. And then what I'll do is 90 degrees to that, perpendicular to that, I just start cutting very thin slices. And once I'm all done, I will have finely diced or even minced onions. How did everybody's dish come out the other day? I hope it came out well. Anybody has any questions about what we did the other day, please ask, or comments.
Any reports back on the pasta?
It was delicious. It was successful with the whole family.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
That's what I like to hear. That's ultimately why I like doing cooking classes, when people say that, oh, yeah, we like that. All right. So we have about a medium's onion's worth. Before I start that, I'm going to chop my ginger and garlic just so that they're all ready. There's a French term for this called mise en place, everything in its place. And it's never a bad idea, especially when you're starting out cooking, to get everything prepped up initially before you actually turn the pan on. I know it's exactly what I didn't do the other day. That was for the expediency of the class, but this class is a little easier to do because we have a little bit more time for it. It's just not as intensive in terms of what we're doing today. So I've just got the onion, the ginger, the garlic over here. Before I get started any further, a note about rice. Basmati rice, if you have that in your house and you are inclined to cook that. This was a method that I learned from some Indian folks that I worked with at a restaurant. It went counter to every way that I'd ever cooked rice my entire life. And once they showed it to me, I never went back to cook basmati rice any other way. Essentially, you cook it open. You put in your rice, and 2 times the amount of water, a little pat of butter, a pinch of salt. Turn on your flame, let it come to a boil, turn it down to a medium-high heat, and let the water cook and evaporate essentially, or be absorbed by the rice. And as soon as it's completely absorbed, and you can tell, just tilt the pan, and if you don't see any water coming out, as soon as it hits that point, I turn the pan off, put a cover on it, and just let it sit. Perfect basmati rice every time. It's amazing. Anyway, we're going to start doing the Mattar Paneer. So to that end, I've got my pan over here. Now, the directions that I gave everybody are for the using whole spices, which is fine if you don't mind biting into a cardamom pod or cloves or such. Over the years, my family has decided they don't like it as much as I may like it, so I've changed my ways a little bit. I still start off with a cinnamon stick and a bay leaf because those are easy to pull out at the end. Unfortunately, cardamom pods, which are that small, I don't even know if you can see it, but they're pretty small. Those and cloves both tend to get lost within something like the Mattar Paneer. And when people bite into them, they're less than thrilled. So I've changed my ways some, and I now grind it and put it in with the other spices. All right. So we're going to add a little bit of oil, about a tablespoon, and I'm going to throw in the clove and the cinnamon stick into the pan now.
So, Chef Tom,
Yes.
I have seen a lot of recipes that say to dry toast your spices. What's the difference between doing it just in a hot pan and with oil?
Yeah, so dry toasted spices are usually used, you grind them up and you put them in towards the end. So they add a flavor burst at the very end. Heat brings out the essential oils and a lot of spices, coriander, cumin, those types of fried spices. So
Can I ask a question? What kind of pot or pan are we cooking everything in? Is it a large one? Is it a saucepan? Is it a frying pan?
A small pot, I would say. So this is what I'm using here. I don't know if that gives you an idea of about the size. This is what, 3-quart pot roughly. Should fit everything. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I guess I should have started with that. Didn't think about it. So back to the spices. I'm sorry. So when you're using spices, especially in Indian food, they're added in 2 different ways. Most of the spices are added in early, and you fry them in the oil, and the oil helps bring the flavors out. Some spices are added in towards the very end of cooking, one of those being this spice mix called Garam Masala. Now, Garam Masala is similar to curry powder in that there are a lot of overlapping spices. They do different in terms of which spices are in, but a lot of the same spices are in both. The biggest difference between these 2 spice mixes is that Garam Masala is mostly toasted spices and then ground, and curry powder are raw spices. So Garam Masala is something that you would add in towards the very end of cooking to give it a burst of flavor, and the curry powder is something you would put in earlier. Sorry, I was showing you the turmeric. That's my curry powder. Can't see it either way anyway. So that gives you some idea of what's going to go on. So I started cooking.
Wait, I'm sorry. What is already in the pot?
Right now, the only thing in the pot I have is a cinnamon stick and a bay leaf. I turned it off because I was talking too much. I didn't want to burn it. And essentially what you're doing is once you put it in the heat, the bay leaf will start to brown a little bit, and the cinnamon stick will actually start to unfurl. Once that happens, that's when I add in my onions.
With a little bit of the salt, with a little bit of oil.
A little bit, about a tablespoon or so of oil. I tend to be light on oil with many things. A lot of recipes that I read tend to be heavier on oil than I am.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
There's a bay leaf in the pot, right?
Yeah, the bay leaf and a cinnamon stick in the pot right now. Okay? And now there's the onion in there as well. While that's frying, it's on a medium-high heat. I am going to chop the garlic and the ginger. And again, if you saw me the other day, you saw this technique where I just take a heavy-duty cleaver and I just smash it. That takes care of much of the chopping work right there.
Is the pot on high heat or low heat or medium?
Medium-high. Medium-high heat. And you're going to fry the onions until they just start to turn a little bit golden brown. Don't mix them too much. Let them just cook. They need their time. It's one of those things, as much as you might want to rush, don't, because that brings out a lot of flavor in the onion. And the garlic and the ginger, I'm going to try and mince very finely. Oftentimes in Indian food, they actually will puree and make the garlic and the ginger into a paste. I generally don't bother, but I do want to do it quite fine. So it just melts into the sauce. It's nothing you shouldn't be able to suddenly get a bite of ginger or garlic in the curry. At least not a noticeable one, let's put it that way. Okay. So at this point, I've got my onion in the pan, ginger and garlic right here. Just going to put it aside until it's ready to go in the pan. I'll try and show you the what it looks like before I put this in. All right. So I'm just going to give it a small stir. It's still got a couple more minutes to go. And in the meantime, we're going to start measuring out our spices and grinding some. Now, I've written out a very long list of spices. And the easy way around that, if you don't want to put in all the little spices, is you can just substitute just a curry powder for that. In the cookbook, I have my own homemade curry powder recipe that I like to use. Curry powders there's so many different kinds on the market. Ultimately, you have to find one that you like. What I like about making my own is I don't have to make it very spicy. I can keep it on the mild side. I can always add in more spices after the fact.
Chef Tom, should we wait until we see the cinnamon unfurl before adding the onion?
Yes, at least to partially unfurl. Yeah, it should start to. You'll see it start to open it up with the heat. Okay, and you should also be able to smell that cinnamony flavor.
And you know what? I want to share that here at camp, I was cooking some Indian food, and I went looking for a Garam Masala or curry powder in the pantry, and couldn't find one because Chef Tom always makes his own. So I had to make my own mix there, and I thought it was going to be really hard, but I was shocked at how easy it was and how great it tasted.
Yeah. So actually at camp, there's a dual reason again for doing what I do. I like to make my own spice mixes. I have much more control over things, the heat level, the taste. The other reason too, and this is also a big one, especially for a kosher camp, pure spices don't necessarily need a hechsher on them. As soon as you do a spice mix, it has to have a hechsher, which means it has to have a mark that says it is kosher. While that's not really a problem, you can certainly find kosher curry powders. It does limit your choices. So this way my hands are not tied and I don't have to worry about what brand or anything that I get in terms of that because I'm making my own. So in the meantime, while that's frying, we're going to grind some spices. But if you do want to just substitute curry powder for the entire thing and you don't want to go ahead and grind your own spices, feel free to go ahead and do that. And I would say you probably, instead of all the spices that I'm adding in right now, you probably want to add in about a tablespoon in addition to curry
Sorry,
powder.
could you tell us exactly how much spices and which ones to add?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Hopefully you got the recipe in front of you too, but I'm going to turn my heat down a little bit. So I'm going to be grinding some coriander here. This is coriander seed, about a teaspoon. Okay. That's the coriander. Okay, then I've got my cumin that I'm going to grind as well, a teaspoon of that. Again, I like to use whole spices because it's you get a fresher and just a little bit more intense flavor from it. That said, it would be great if we all had it. We don't, and that's fine. My spice grinder is a little funny, so I need a knife to use. Okay, not ground yet, but I don't want to burn my onion. So at this point, and I don't know how well you can see that. So I have the onion, but it's just starting to bring it a little closer. It's starting to brown at this point, just a little bit. Now that that's going on, I'm going to add in the ginger and the garlic. All right, And I'm gonna fry that. And I've turned my heat to lower than I normally would because I'm trying to show you guys what's going on and not burn what I'm doing at the same time. All right, so those few cloves that I mentioned in the very beginning to put in, I'm gonna put in about half of them in ground. Since they're not gonna be whole, I'm just using a little half of that. And I'm putting in a little bit of cardamom. Now, the cardamom that I have two types. Cardamom pods, which is what I was talking about putting in initially, are these green pods. Inside those are the little tiny seeds that are actually the spice itself, which you could buy separately. Makes it a lot easier. You don't have to pop the little seeds out of the small little pods there, which definitely is simpler. Where did I put my cover? There it is, sorry. All right, now we're just gonna finish grinding these spices.
And how much, if someone is going to use
Sorry,
ground
one moment,
cloves?
because with the grinder, I can't hear anybody. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If someone is using ground cloves, how much of that?
I would say a pinch. Clove is just one of those very, very strong spices that can easily overwhelm something. And so you really shouldn't notice any one spice over another ultimately. It should really be a melding of all the spices, is what you're going for.
One like powdered spices for full.
Excuse me?
Yes?
How much cardamom shall we add?
Do you have, what form is it in?
Pods.
Pods. Okay. What I would do is I would take a couple of pods, maybe like 5 or 6 of them, and then smash them. Just gently tap them with a knife, and you should notice that there's little.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yep. There should be these little seeds inside of it, little black seeds, and that's the part you'll grind.
So like 5 or 6?
Yeah, 5 or 6 pods.
How are you gonna grind them?
Okay. Hopefully that answers that question. All right, I'm just going to add the rest of the ground spices into this mix here. I'm going to put in about a half teaspoon of turmeric, half teaspoon of paprika. Now, I do paprika because I like the chili powder flavor, but I don't want the spice. You can certainly use cayenne or a chili powder, and that will definitely give it more spice and more heat. Mine tend to be mild. Very purposely because I'm cooking for my wife, and my wife doesn't like spicy food. So, and you should cook for your audience as well. If people don't like spicy, don't give it to them. All right?
If you don't have a grinder, what should you do with the cardamom pod?
Mortar and pestle would be good. I mean, you can put it in as it is. You'll just end up biting it into it, and you'll be a little intense bite at that moment. So it's not the end of the world if you bite into whole spices by any stretch. It's just a slightly intense flavor.
And if you have a ground cardamom, how much of that?
About a quarter teaspoon, I would say. Okay.
Crushed red pepper. Can I just put that in and not have it ground?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, no hard and fast rules with any of these things. It's really to taste. All right. So at this point, my onion is nice and golden. I put in my garlic and ginger, and that's had a few minutes to fry. And at this point, I'm going to put in the spice mix, which includes the cumin, coriander, turmeric, red chili, paprika, curry powder, and some salt. And that's all going to go in right now together. And I'm going to fry that for a couple.
I'm sorry, can you go over the spice list one more time?
Yeah, it should be also on the recipe in front of you guys, but I'm happy to do it, not a problem. It's a teaspoon each of cumin and coriander.
Okay.
Half a teaspoon of turmeric, chili powder, paprika. A teaspoon of curry powder and a teaspoon of salt as well. All right. And then because I didn't add in the whole cardamom and clove, I also ground a little bit of clove, like 3 cloves, and a little bit of the cardamom into this as well. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. At this point, that's frying. I'm going to open my can of tomato here.
All right. Do you want to measure this or do you want me to? Sorry. I'm sorry. I was talking to Eli.
No problem. So at this point, I've got a can of tomato product here. And my recipe says about 1.5 cups, which is about right. But give the spices time to fry, because like I said, that's what brings out the the spice. That's what brings out the flavor. So don't be too, if you need to turn the heat down even lower to let it fry a little, that's a good thing.
And this is when your kitchen starts smelling really good.
Okay, and then I've got a bag of frozen peas here, which I'm going to add very shortly as well.
So canned tomatoes are okay, or should we use fresh?
Either way, whatever you happen to have. Honestly, I am one of these people that when tomatoes are in season, I use fresh tomatoes exclusively, or practically. The rest of the year, I use mostly canned tomatoes. I'm just not a big fan of off-season tomatoes. For cooking, they're not bad, but certainly not raw. So I end up using just canned tomato. So I had said about 1.5 cups into it. So measure out about 1.5 cups.
And
Right.
if you were using raw tomatoes, Chef Tom, how would you prepare them?
About 2 tomatoes, depending on their size. You know, I mean, if they're really large, 1 large tomato, 2 medium-sized tomatoes, maybe even 3. You know?
How would you prepare them to go in?
Chop it. It's going to cook, so once it cooks, it'll break down in the pot. So yeah, you can just do that.
How many tomatoes about this size?
Unfortunately, I have no visual.
Okay, tennis ball.
Tennis ball size, 2.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, you got it. The problems with doing it this way. So once I have the tomatoes in,
How much dried red chili pepper is it?
about 1/2 teaspoon. Oh, let me paraphrase to taste though. Make sure it's, don't put in more than you guys are spicy, because that's not good. That's no fun.
Question.
Yeah.
The recipe in the chat, is that for next week?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Is the recipe in the chat for next week?
No, that recipe in there, it has it's what we're doing today. It has the Mattar Paneer, which is what we've started making. Also the cucumber Raita, we'll get to that. And the paneer, which we made last time, but is going into this dish.
All right, so I have put my tomatoes in, and now I've added the whole 1 pound of peas. And I'm just gonna stir that up. So it's a little thick. You can add a little bit of water into it to get it to a consistency, kind of a saucy consistency. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of water, maybe about 1/4 cup to start. You're not looking for soupy, but you are looking for a sauce on top. And then once everything's in there, I'm gonna turn the heat to medium-low, put a cover on it, and then just let it cook for a little bit. So that's where we are right now with the peas without the cheese at this point. So you have curried peas at this point. Okay. So I'm going to take my paneer now, and hopefully you can see that it's gotten very dense. And I am just going to trim off partial. I'm going to freeze the other half because it was definitely more than I needed. Okay. And then we're going to cube it, roughly. It won't be perfect because the shape is not that perfect, but that's okay. What you'll notice, now most cheese, when you put it on a pan, it starts to melt. It's one of the things about paneer. Paneer does not melt. So we will be frying the cheese, giving it some color, and then we will put it into the Mattar Paneer. Now at the summer camp, because we're making such a large amount of it, instead of frying the paneer, and this is certainly an alternative, and you can do it at home, is we take it, we toss it with a little bit of oil, and then we throw it in the oven to brown. The other thing that I wanted to mention too is, to this point, this curry is completely vegan.
Could I ask a question? I'm so sorry. Was 1/2 cup of water supposed to go into the pot as well?
See how liquidy it is. If it seems a little too dry, add in a little bit. I added in 1/4 cup. I would rather add in a little less than a little bit more. I can always add in more as it cooks.
And the spices, should we put them in the pot or not yet?
The spices?
Yeah.
The spices should have been added into the pot before the tomato.
Oh, okay.
Fry the spices with the onion and the garlic.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. So the curry's just cooking. It really doesn't need very much attention. You can see that I've cubed the paneer, so it's small pieces. So
I think you were going to tell us about a vegan alternative to the paneer.
I did start that. I'm sorry. Thank you. So the vegan alternative to this would be very simple. I would just take some tofu and diced tofu, and then also brown it either in the oven or frying it, and then I would add that in. And at that point, the dish is completely vegan. If you're making the cucumber raita to go with it, then you may want to buy and keep that vegan. You might want to buy a vegan yogurt. And
Excuse me?
Yes.
Are the peas or the paneer in the pot yet?
Once the tomatoes have gone in the pot, okay, so at this point, what I have done, I've fried the onions with the cinnamon and bay leaf. I put in the ginger and garlic, fried that, put in all the spices that I mentioned, except for the garam masala, which we will put in at the very end. And I fried that, put the tomatoes in, cooked that for a moment, and then added the peas. That's where we are at this point.
Okay.
Okay?
What if we added the garam masala already?
It's not the end of the world. It's fine if you've added it already. You know, it's really just to give it a little bit more flavor boost at the very end. But if you've added in early, you've added in early. You can always taste it at the end. And if you want a little bit extra kick to it, you can put a little bit more in, you know? So it's really, again, no hard and fast rules with this stuff.
Did you say that you froze some of your paneer?
I will be freezing. So the other day we made the paneer, and I made a large block of it. I'm going to use this much for now, but I still have, problem with tilting. I still have this much paneer left. So this paneer, because I have no plans to use it immediately, I'll wrap it in plastic wrap really tightly, label it, date it, put it in my freezer, and then take it out the day before for whenever you want to make another dish with paneer. So that will be.
The recipe says ½ pound of paneer. Is that right?
Yeah, approximately. Yeah. So usually if you go into a store to buy paneer, most of them are in 1 pound packages. So for 4 people, ½ pound of paneer is a decent amount.
And would you say is that a cup overall? Like
of what?
Like, I don't know. I don't have like a good way to measure ½ pound. Would you say it's like a cup?
Let me see. I honestly, I didn't measure this too, so I'll tell you in a moment.
Thank you.
And also, is the heat still on medium high?
I'm sorry. No, once you put in the peas and the tomato, turn it down to a medium low. Okay? Does that sound right? All right, so I'm just gonna.
When I was looking at the paneer that you used, Chef Tom, I thought that's about the same size as a block of tofu. So
this is actually a little bit more than a ½ pound. And so, yeah, I'd say a ½ pound is 1 cup. Okay? Does that give you guys a better?
Helpful. Thank you.
So it's about a cup. Okay? I'm ending up putting in a little bit more. You can always do that. A little, you know. Just going to rinse my hands off here really quickly. Yes.
Are we going to use this? Are we going to use something that we made today for future recipe?
No, not today. We did that Monday for today's recipe. But today we're not doing anything for a future recipe. Okay. So while that's cooking,
Did cilantro go in yet, or that comes later?
Cilantro will go in with the garam masala at the very end, about the same time that I add in the paneer, which I'm going to hold off. I'm going to let this cook for a little bit, and then I'm going to start making the raita, the cucumber raita, which is basically just a cucumber yogurt salad. I'm going to cut some of the skin off, not all of it. This is an organic cucumber, so I'm less inclined, and they're also from our farm, so they tend to be a little sweeter. The skin is not as bitter. And then I'm just going to slice it very thin. If you have something like a mandolin or a slicer, you can certainly use that. I have I have a little slicer that I've used over many years. It just will slice something very thin if I wanted to, and it's nice and simple. I can just do this, or I can also slice it this way. But since I pulled this out, we'll just continue this way. We're going to take this. We're going to put about a little bit of salt on it and get some of that moisture out. We'll squeeze it after a bit. So, all right, so we have about one cucumber's worth there. I'm going to just take a small bowl, put it in the bowl, take some salt and toss it on top, and then just let that sit so we pull some of that water out. Just for about one cucumber, this is about a half a teaspoon worth of salt, and I'm just tossing it with the salt with the cucumber, and I'm just going to put that aside for right now. Okay? I'm going to go check on my peas and curry. It's cooking away nicely. Nice, slow, nothing's burning on the bottom, which is always a good thing. So at this point,
Chef Tom, is there a way to get the water out of the cucumbers without salt?
you can grate them and then squeeze them. You'll get some water out that way, but not as much. Salt is really the way you extract the excess water from things. So, like I said, if you grate it, you can certainly squeeze out a bunch of the salt that way. I'm going to switch gears here for a moment and fry off the paneer. Okay, so in this case, I have a cast iron pan here. I'm going to put it on medium heat and let it get hot. And then we'll take the paneer, and you want to put it on one layer. Don't crowd the pan too much because you want the paneer to get some color. If you crowd the pan too much, it won't pick up any color, and that's part of gives it a nice flavor as well. Okay, so add a little bit of oil. Now, if you have ghee at home, if that's something anybody has, that's certainly what the preference would be for any of this. And if you're not sure what ghee is a form of clarified butter. Clarified butter is butter that is been melted and all the milk solids are pulled away from the side. So what you're left with is just the fat, the oil. The nice part is that this is from India, and once you make ghee, it lasts at room temperature indefinitely. Butter will sour, it will turn rancid, but paneer won't. So in high heats with no refrigeration, ghee is a great thing to have around.
Got it. How much should I put in?
Ghee or
Yeah.
oil? About a tablespoon.
Okay.
Just enough to coat the bottom of your pan. If you have a non-stick pan, you can use that. Personally, I'm not a big fan. I don't actually own a non-stick pan.
Excuse me?
Yes?
Should I be heating up a cast iron frying pan
Yes.
with oil?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. A little bit of oil. Let it get hot though. Don't put it in too soon, because if you do, that's when it'll stick really badly. So you want to let the pan get good and warm. So at this point, we're there. Should be able to hear it sizzling. And I have one layer. And I'm just going to leave that in there and leave it undisturbed for a few minutes to actually let it fry, to get some color on it. And then I will take a spatula and just toss it with the spatula and keep cooking it for a few minutes until it gets the right color.
I'm sorry. You have what's in the frying pan?
Right now, it's just a little bit of oil and the paneer, the diced paneer. Okay?
All of the paneer?
About that half pound that we had talked about before. Okay? So now that's just frying. And I'm leaving it be. As tempting as it is to play with it, I'm leaving it alone. What I just put on my cutting board over here is some cilantro. This pile of cilantro is going to be used for two different things. Some of it's going to go into the curry towards the very end, and then some of it's going to go in for the cucumber raita. Okay. So. All right. Still going to let that go for a minute. In the meantime, just going to chop up the cilantro.
And I see you bundling it all together.
When I was gonna say, when I chop herbs, the first thing I do is I kind of gather it into one small pile, and then just slice it very thin one way, and then I'll go back the other way, and then just start chopping it up, like so. Okay. In this case, I'm not chopping it too fine. I want a little bit of texture in it, and also doesn't need it. All right, so at this point, it's been about a minute or so for the paneer. I'm going to take my spatula and just kind of run it underneath and toss it. And you might be able to see that, see if I can pull off a couple to show you that there's some of them are starting to get a little golden on top. Trying to figure out where the, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but hopefully you could get an idea. So at this point, I kind of flipped it over, and I'll keep frying it, but none of it's melted. The cheese is still solid blocks, and there's no melting like you would normally have. Periodically, I just go check my peas and give it a good stir just to make sure that it's not burning on the bottom, because that's always a good thing. And going to give the paneer another toss and let it keep frying. And then in the meantime, we're going to make the sauce, the dressing, the yogurt dressing for the cucumber raita. So for the amount that I did here, 1 cucumber, I'm going to add in about a half a cup of yogurt. So you can measure it out. At this point, I just do it by eye.
And this is just plain yogurt?
This is just plain yogurt. Yeah. If you have Greek yogurt, you can use that. I might thin it a little bit if it's a really thick yogurt. I make my own yogurt at home, and I tend to drain.
Are we doing this in a separate bowl?
The yogurt?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So right now, I'm just making the dressing. This is just yogurt right now in the pan for the moment. I'm still keeping an eye on my paneer. It's starting to get nice and golden, and we're still going to let it fry a little bit longer. So to this amount of yogurt here, I'm going to add about, this is a large lime, so half a lime will work for this. Not putting any additional salt in here because we have the salt on the cucumber, so that should be adequate for how much salt goes into this. Okay, and then I'm going to put in some of this.
Is the yogurt on a pan or in a bowl?
In a bowl. In a bowl.
Okay.
This is the salad dressing. The yogurt is the salad dressing for the cucumbers. So you're just mixing that. So right now what I have in here is just yogurt, lime juice, and cilantro. And then I'll show you one last thing that I will do in just a moment.
Sorry, I missed how much cilantro to add to the half a cup yogurt
Excuse
lime.
me? I didn't hear that last
Oh,
question.
I missed how much cilantro to add to the yogurt.
Oh, and for this one, for the amount that I'm making for the 1 cucumber's worth, it's about 2 tablespoons. Okay? So I'm going to show you what this paneer looks like. You can see there's some of it's got nice golden crust on it. I think you can see it. I hope you can see it. So that's what it's looking like now. So at this point, I'm going to add it into the peas. Okay? And let that just absorb some of the flavor from the curry. So. Scraping it all into the pot. stirring it up. Stir it gently once you add the paneer because you don't want to break up the cubes too much. All right. And I'm just going to put the cover back on there and just let that cook. At this point, once you've done this, it really won't take another 10 minutes, I would say, to cook, just to let the flavors meld together a little bit more. And then at the very end, just before you serve it, I'm going to put in that garam masala and the remaining cilantro into the pan, stir it up, and it's ready to serve. For the cucumber raita, this is the thing I was going to show you right now. And this works if you have a mortar and pestle or a grinder. If not, you can use the garam masala. But one of the things I like to do for a raita like this is toast a little cumin seed, whole cumin seed, and grind it. This goes back to what I said earlier about spices. So I'm toasting the cumin seed because that'll bring out more of the flavor of the cumin seed. I can put it in raw and it will taste of cumin, but this gives it a slightly different type of flavor, a little bit richer, stronger flavor. So I'm putting in about, in this case, about a half a teaspoon into a small pan. I'm going to turn that on. And you want to wait till it starts to turn a little bit of color, and you should begin to smell it as well. Okay? You do need to keep a careful eye on it because it will go from being perfect to being burnt within a few seconds. So not the kind of thing you want to walk away from. Okay? So at this point, I've just got a cumin in the pan. And I'm just going to toast it. And then I will put it in my grinder, grind it, and add it into the yogurt that I have sitting here for the cucumber. Any other questions in the meantime? That's a good thing?
Chef Tom, you cook a lot of different cuisines. How did you get to learn all of these different styles of cooking?
I'm really self-taught. I've been cooking professionally now. It's getting close to 40 years. And I fell in love with Asian food very, very early on. And when I fell in love with it, there were very limited number of restaurants available, limited number of cookbooks. So I did a lot of scouring, asking questions, and I just learned. And I have a vast cookbook collection. And one of the things that fascinates me about cooking is learning the different cuisines, and not just learning the cuisines, but some of the history behind it and how they got to be what they are. From that, you can often determine so many things. I mean, things like Vietnam serves, one of their signature dishes is something called banh mi. It's a sandwich put on a roll. Now, the Vietnamese did not have rolls at the turn of the 20th century, so early 1900s. It wasn't until the French came in, started making food, then that got adopted by Vietnamese, and it changed the whole cuisine. So it's very interesting. Fusion food, we're all eating fusion food constantly. The world is fusion food. In America, it's becoming even more pronounced just due to the different groups that are together. So you have Mexican or Korean style tacos, and you have Vietnamese, Louisiana crawfish dishes. So the melding has become even more intense here in this country just due to the various groups of immigrants that have come in and kind of combined their cuisines. So enough of that. Back to the cumin. I took the cumin off once it started smoking and you could start to smell it. I'm going to grind it up. Excuse me for the noise.
I'm sorry, can you go over what we're doing with the cumin, please? And also, in the yogurt mix, have we added anything else yet?
So in the yogurt presently, there is the yogurt, lime juice, cilantro. That's it. The last thing I'm putting in is this ground toasted cumin, just to give it a little bit of extra flavor. Okay, so this is what it's looking like at this point. Not sure if how much you can see. All right, and that's the dried toasted cumin, and We'll see if the cucumber is sat long enough to exude some liquid. It has. So I'm just going to grab the cucumber at this point. Go ahead.
If we only have ground cumin, should we still toast it or just add it?
Just add it. Just add it. Toasting ground spices is really hard because it's so easy to burn them. So in that case, I would just add a little bit. The other thing you can add, and sometimes I do when I'm just not feeling inclined to toast and grind something, if you have a garam masala already, you can add a little bit of garam masala. That works really nicely. Those spices are already toasted, like we talked about before, so it works as a perfect addition to that as well. It's a mix of spices, one of them usually being cumin, in addition to a whole lot of other spices as well. And oftentimes garam masala has a lot of what I would call sweet spices, so things like clove, cinnamon, cardamom. Although, like I said, a lot of those are already in curry powder too, so there's a lot of overlap. So I squeezed out the cucumber, and in that, I wound up with just one cucumber in the salt. There was a 1/4 cup of liquid that I just pulled off there. And then I'm just mixing the squeezed out cucumber with the yogurt dressing, and I wind up with a cucumber raita that looks like that. All right. The last thing to do for the Mattar Paneer, let me show you what mine looks like at this point. So this is what it looks like. There's red from the tomato, the green from the peas, white from the cheese. Lastly, I'm going to add in the last of the cilantro and a little bit of garam masala. And then the dish is ready to be served. And that's basically dinner tonight. Make some rice and you're all set.
I tasted a few peas and maybe I got confused and added the pepper twice, but mine is pretty spicy.
Just remember it for next time and add less chili.
Yeah. Is it generally a spicy dish?
Not generally a spicy dish. I mean, you know, Indians do like spicy food, so it can often definitely have a little bit of a bite. But no, it shouldn't be. Usually it's not a very spicy dish. So, you know, that's the thing to keep in mind for next time, and just adjust accordingly. I've done it myself, put something in and gone, okay, that was a little spicier than I'd expected. Yeah, and my wife suffers through it, but she eats it anyway. And hopefully nobody suffers through yours.
The cucumber,
I'm sorry, what?
Raita, it's just cucumber, salt, and yogurt.
Well, so the cucumbers you salt, let that sit, and then you make the yogurt dressing, and the yogurt dressing is with the yogurt, lime juice, cilantro, and the toasted cumin. And
what if we just have ground cumin? Can we still toast it?
Yes, then just use the ground cumin. Yeah, don't toast it in that case, because as I said, it's very easy to burn ground spices.
How much cumin should we use if it's just ground?
If you're doing 1 cucumber's worth, or you're doing 2?
Like 1.
Like 1? About a 1/2 teaspoon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So that's basically this Indian cooking class. If there's any other questions, please feel free. I'm not hearing anything. I'm taking that as a good sign.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
It's really good.
That's what I want to hear. Brilliant. Good. I'm really glad to hear that.
I have a question about Monday's class when we're doing the tamale pie.
Yes.
So one of the ingredients is masa harina.
Yep.
And I'm not sure where to get it, but I will see if I can find someone to get it for me since I'm currently quarantining. But I wonder, is there something else to use, or is that really it?
It's really it. It's very different with just regular cornmeal. So that's going to be a tough one. But in terms of getting masa harina, most grocery stores at this point honestly sell them.
And is it a powdery? Is it like a flour kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a ground flour, basically. So what the difference between cornmeal and masa harina, now, when you get dried corn has this really tough husk. I don't know if the husk is the right word, but each kernel has this coating around it. And what they do is they take that and put it into a lime solution. That takes off the coating, and then what you're left with is the inside of the corn kernel, which can be dried and ground, and that's masa. That's the stuff that you use for making tortillas, making tamales, making arepas, all these different types of dishes. And that's made with masa. So that's already got the hull taken off of the corn kernel.
Got it.
I hope that answers the question.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, I mean, at this point, it's usually very commercially available.
Apparently, Whole Foods has it.
Whole Foods, I'm sure, has it. Stop and Shop, I know around me, carries it. My Asian grocer actually carries it as well, in fact. So, I mean, it's very readily available at this point. So hopefully you'll be able to find it, and hopefully it won't be a problem. Any other questions or queries? If not, then I think we'll call it a class. But if you have any questions, please feel free. Not going anywhere.
Tamale pie is probably my favorite camp dish, so I'm really, really excited for Monday.
Oh, wait a minute. You said that for this dish too. Which one is it?
It's really hard to choose. I mean, this is definitely Mattar Paneer up there in the top. But tamale pie. I made it for myself recently for the first time, and it was really great. And I was
good. I'm thrilled.
Anything else we should keep in mind for Monday to prepare in advance or get ready?
As long as you have the vegetables, it's actually a fairly simple dish to put together. Butter or margarine, depending on what your preference is. The masa is the big one. There is one other thing I will say, and I don't know that was written up. In the cookbook, and Johanna, if it's not written up, a nice accompaniment to the tamale pie is this Mexican coleslaw that I do. So if you have the cookbook, it's in there. And if not, we can probably send you a recipe and get it. It's basically cabbage, red onion, carrots, cilantro, jalapeno, and then an orange dressing. And I think you're about to see my cat, because my cat decided he wants to be part of it too.
And are we going to be making the refried beans, or are you going to?
No, we're gonna probably just use canned refried beans. Although I can show you how to make refried beans, and I'll be happy to do that. So I will make some refried beans, but it might be, for most people's purposes, easier to buy a can of refried beans. But I can still show you how to do it as well. All right.
All right. Well, we are very excited for our next cooking class on Monday. In the meantime, we're going to have Angel Walk Radio tomorrow afternoon at 4. And when you are enjoying your dishes this evening, your Mattar Paneer and your Raita, send us a photo. We would love to see what you've cooked.
All right, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day and a great weekend, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.